If you haven't seen it already, make sure you watch part 1 of this 2-part series where I talk about the pros of the A7 IV over the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro. In this video, we're going to be talking about the opposite. What makes the 6K Pro better than the A7 IV? Now you're going to notice that I'm going to suddenly change clothes into a different t-shirt, and that's because I actually recorded this initially as one long film before realizing it was going to be far too long. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, make sure you click on the link above and watch that first. But now here is why the Pocket 6K Pro may be better than the A7 IV, and the final conclusions on which camera is truly best for you. First up, it's the obvious one. It's in the name, and that is its resolution. 6K is more than 4K, and yes, there is a noticeable difference. You can certainly crop in a lot more on the 6K footage than you can on the 4K image of the Sonys. That said, in most shoot situations where you're not doing heavy crops, it's not really noticeable. They both look very sharp. The Sony is downsampling from a 7K sensor, so actually your final kind of output to 4K or HD is going to look very, very similar with both. As I mentioned before, that resolution does come at a cost, and that is with the file sizes. And personally, I'd rather go with the smaller file sizes of the A7 IV over the extra resolution of the Pocket 6K Pro. Second up is the image quality. Now this is a really close one, and to be honest, I think both cameras are brilliant. For most situations, for nearly all corporate shoots you'd ever do, both cameras produce amazing results, which is comparable to much more expensive cameras. It's amazing these cameras, the price point they are, can produce such great results. They are extremely close even in their look, but I do think the Blackmagic camera is just that bit nicer. There's something special about Blackmagic's footage. I think it's got that extra quality, that extra detail, that extra depth that the Sonys don't quite have. Maybe it's the amazing B-raw, or maybe it's something else, but there is definitely something that is just nicer with the image quality, more organic with the Blackmagic footage. That said, there is nothing wrong with the Sony footage at all, and the Sony definitely produces a cleaner image, and maybe that is more useful on the types of shoots that you're doing. Between the two, I don't really think clients can tell the difference, so I think other factors are probably more important for most people. The Pocket 6K Pro has by far the best screen of any camera that is out there right now. That big 5-inch daylight viewable screen is so useful, and it's something that I miss when I use any other camera. Now its size of course does have a negative effect on the size of the camera, and of course it can only flip up and it can't go around to the side, so you can't film yourself with it, for example. However, if you're filming for clients, the screen is really nice. It just means you don't need an external monitor. The A7 IV screen, like all the Sony mirrorless cameras, is pretty bad. I mean, it's years out of date now. You look at all the screens from the other manufacturers and they all have much better screens than what Sony are putting on their cameras. It's a real shame we haven't seen an upgrade, and for me it's probably one of the biggest reasons why you wouldn't go for a Sony. Especially when you jump back and forth between cameras like the Pocket 6K Pro and then back to the A7 IV or even the FX3, you really do notice the difference, and it is quite frustrating. Yes, you can use an external monitor, which solves the issue and of course gives you the extra functions like false color, but it is just so nice to have a great screen built in to a camera like the Pocket 6K Pro. Speaking of the screen and its functions, there's also things like built-in false color. These are so useful features to have when doing filmmaking. It means you know where your highlights are and you're not blowing out the image accidentally. That combined with the very large screen makes it much easier to have confidence in the image that you're getting in the Blackmagic camera than it is on the Sonys. Speaking of built-in functions, the inbuilt ND filters of the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro are super useful. They're not perfect. There's definitely a color shift when you go to the highest setting, and that can be quite frustrating, although with Blackmagic RAW it is quite easy to fix. That said, it's just nice to have it built in there just in case. Now, external ND filters aren't the end of the world, and people are quite used to them nowadays. And if you come from the mirrorless world, you probably already own a variable ND anyway, so perhaps this is not as big of a deal, but it is very nice to have the option of built-in NDs with the Pocket 6K Pro. One concern with the Sonys is the lack of a built-in fan, which the Pocket 6K Pro does have. I've used the camera in some really hot situations all around the world, and I've had no issues with it overheating or any concerns about the camera getting too hot with the Pocket 6K Pro. Sadly, that can't be said the same with the A7 IV, and there have been a few situations, in some quite mild situations actually, where the overheating warning has come up. Now, there have also been other situations where it's been absolutely fine, so that temperamentalness of the A7 IV can be frustrating and a little bit concerning. If you're doing a lot of long interviews, then maybe the A7 IV isn't a camera you should be going for, and instead be looking at the Pocket 6K Pro because of that built-in fan. Now, one of the biggest reasons why you'd go for a Pocket 6K Pro is, of course, the amazing Blackmagic RAW. It is absolutely incredible. It's so easy to edit. It runs so smoothly in DaVinci Resolve. Not to mention, of course, you can change your white balance, you can change your ISO all after the fact. And it's just so freeing being able to shoot, knowing that you can fix all of that in post. The Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro also has 2 mini XLR audio inputs, and this is extremely useful. Now, you can buy the adapter for the Sony A7 IV, and certainly if you're doing a lot of work with XLR audio where you want to record in camera, then that's certainly an option that you can go down, but of course it's going to add additional cost. I do find mini XLR a little bit frustrating. I hate they have to have another little adapter cable. I wish maybe there was just one large full-size XLR on the side of the camera rather than 2 small ones, but certainly having any sort of XLR built into such a small body is really useful, and it's a shame it's something we don't get on the A7 IV. I mentioned this earlier, but Blackmagic are the masters of affordable multicam productions. With all their switches and all their mixers that they've got out there, with all the converters and all the accessories that you can buy for doing multicam, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro and the A10 Mini series is an awesome combination to do small multicam productions. If you buy 3 or 4 Pocket 6K Pros and use them with the A10 switcher, you get some amazing results. It means you can control the camera from the mixer, you can do things like ISO recording, and many, many more great features. Finally, the last big reason to go for the Pocket 6K Pro is the fact that the camera includes Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve for free. And that's a major, major deal in my books. Now, of course, if you already own a copy of Resolve Studio, then it's maybe not really a big deal, as it's just another license that you don't really need. Perhaps you can sell it on eBay. But certainly, if you're starting out in the industry, being able to get your editing software as well as your camera for all in one price is an awesome way to start. Not to mention that integration. You know, they're constantly adding updates to both Resolve and the cameras and how they work together, and having that whole all-in-one ecosystem as well as the multicam options is quite incredible, and it's just something that Sony really can't touch, especially in this price bracket. So there you go, that is the very exhaustive comparison list between the A7 IV and the Pocket 6K Pro. As you can see, these are both amazing cameras. I love both of these cameras. They're both brilliant cameras that we use all the time, and I love them for different reasons. There is something special about the Pocket 6K Pro that's really hard to explain. It's that image quality, it's just when you're using the camera, it's just really enjoyable. That said, in a professional, fast turnaround environment like corporate work, I think it's hard to beat the Sony A7 IV, and it's hard not to recommend that as the camera that most people should go for. Things like the autofocus, IBIS, the better lens selection, they are reasons why Sony makes more sense for most people. That said, you certainly won't be wrong going for the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro. The other option, of course, is the new Pocket 6K G2 camera from Blackmagic. It does look great, and it probably is more similar to a Sony in many ways because it does lack that built-in ND and it doesn't have as bright of a screen. That said, I just love those features of the Pocket 6K Pro, so I think if you're going down the Blackmagic route, you should probably just go with the Pro option. So to conclude, if you're doing a lot of corporate work, you're doing a lot of fast turnaround work, corporate interviews, a lot of B-roll, you may be doing some photography, then I think the A7 IV is the obvious choice. That said, if you do more things like music videos, maybe shooting short films, or if you just want a camera that you want to like hone your craft and want to just get really creative with, then I think the Blackmagic camera is really hard to beat. I hope you have found this video useful, and if you have, please like and subscribe as it massively helps me out. And I'll say goodbye until next time.